There are 9 of them in total. 9 massive concrete chimneys sticking out of the landscape, like candles on a birthday cake. Up until my last week, the scariest thing about them was the deep booming noise they sometimes produced, which shook the ground with the ferocity of a subwoofer cranked up all the way. They spout out one at a time, like geysers releasing pressure. I'd walk the perimeter, and there went Chimney 3, followed by Chimney 5, and then suddenly, Chimney 8 and 9 would go together. That's as weird as it got, before I noticed the thing in Chimney 7. I want to make it clear from the get-go. I have no idea what the chimneys do or why they're here. They're alone in a fenced-off field with no buildings in sight. There are 3 padlocked doors on opposing ends of the property, with roads made only from the flattening effect of tires on grass, with the one nearest to Chimney 7 being overgrown. I think there must be bunkers beneath my feet, although I suppose the doors could also lead to storage sheds. It's hard to tell, and I've been told not to ask. Why are the chimneys there? Is this some sort of nuclear power plant? Are they testing sound cannons? Are they part of an experiment? Pressure valves for a dormant supervolcano? I don't have answers to those questions. I wish I did, but I'm just a temp. Anytime I've tried asking, I've been told the answers were on a need-to-know basis, and all I needed to know was that the chimneys needed patrolling, and that patrolling them was my job. That, and reporting anything unusual. The first few weeks were fine. It took a bit of adjusting, especially to the noise. The first time I heard the boom, I was so scared, I nearly peed myself. I thought something had gone wrong, and that the whole field was about to collapse. I know, it sounds like I'm exaggerating, but really, put yourself in my shoes. You're minding your own business when your temp agency calls in the middle of the night. There's an employer offering twice your hourly rate, on condition that you leave immediately. It's the new moon, so you drive 30 miles out of town in complete darkness. You get there, and there's only one guy there to greet you. He tells you their patrolman never showed up for his shift tonight, gives you the job, makes you sign a non-disclosure agreement, tells you to walk around the field, climb the chimneys, radio in anything strange. That's it. He leaves you there. You start to walk. It's the dead of night. No traffic. Complete and utter silence. And then, boom! It's terrifying. I tried to radio it in, but it took half an hour to spot where the connection was strong enough to hear the reply. That's normal. Keep patrolling. That's what they told me. Cold, clinical, straightforward. Each subsequent boom made me less and less nervous, but I never quite got over the split second of dread they caused. I think it's because they came at random, so there was no way to brace myself. If you approach a garbage bin and know someone's about to jump out at you, your heart rate might quicken a bit when they do, but it won't be that bad. If you know every single garbage bin might have someone in it waiting to jump out at you, but you don't know which or when, that spike in your heart rate will be a little higher. But I'm not here to tell you about the booming noises. I'm here to tell you about Chimney 7. Chimney 7 was just like all the others. I'd say it was approximately 9, maybe 10 stories high. There was a grated, and in places, rusty spiral staircase circling around it all the way to the top. I couldn't tell you the exact circumference, but it was wide enough that you'd be able to drop a car into the hole without hitting the sides. It took approximately 6 minutes to climb the stairs, and only 5 to get back down, and that's without resting. Up until my last week, Chimney 7 was no different from the others, and then came the night where everything changed. It was cold enough that I could see my breath. Halfway through my shift, I'd grabbed an old baseball cap from the back of my truck to keep my head warm. Nothing special, just a green cap with Fido Ditto printed on it. Yeah, I know, I'm showing my age. Although I'd never seen smoke coming from the chimneys, despite me calling them chimneys. That evening, as I approached Chimney 7, I spotted a small wisp of smoke billowing through the air. Since it was my job to report anything unusual, I tried radioing out, but all I heard was static. I couldn't have been farther from the spot my signal normally got through if I had been actively trying to avoid it, so I decided that if I was going to make the effort to walk all the way back, I better make damn sure I had something to report. I began climbing the steps around Chimney 7, and as I did, I heard a low growl that stopped me dead in my tracks. I closed my eyes and listened, but I couldn't pinpoint the source. I figured it was the sound of the grate buckling in the cold, or maybe scraping against the concrete wall, but the closer I got to the top, the louder it got. Once I reached the topmost platform, I realized it was coming from the chimney. Something mechanical, I figured. Probably malfunctioning, to boot. I figured I'd have to look into the chimney, but I was reluctant. See, I never tried before, nor had I been instructed to do so. I suppose I could have, but those damn sonic-like booms made me nervous. All those nights in the dark made my imagination run wild, and I had this vivid, unshakable mental image that if I craned my neck and looked into the hole, the chimney would boom and my head would be blasted straight off my neck. With that fear very much at the forefront of my mind, I gripped the edge of the chimney and shyly poked my head over just enough to be able to see. There was nothing but blackness beyond the top few stories. Blackness, and a symphony of wind howling through the tunnel with a growl that seemed to cycle from low to high to low again, as though the chimney were a sleeping, snoring giant. No sooner had I popped my head in, did I pull it back out. That was enough bravery for one night. I climbed down and hurried to the radio spot, giving my report, but while it did sound like the signal went through, I never got a reply. The next night, I wasn't quite as reluctant to look into Chimney 7. All evening, I kept tabs of which chimney had been booming, and good old 7 hadn't done it once. I figured it was really defective, and therefore safe. I climbed the stairs to the same growly tune and then peered inside, pushing my head in farther than the night before. A gust of wind coming from deep below flung my cap in the air and out of reach. It spiraled its way down the chimney like a helicopter seat and disappeared from sight. I wasn't fond enough of the cap to contact the employer and beg for it back, but I wished I had something to stay warm. I flicked my flashlight on and moved the beam in circles, if only to see what had become of it, but the light couldn't penetrate far enough to see the bottom. Oh well. Again, I went back to the radio hotspot, and again, I mentioned the dysfunctional chimney. Still no reply. Something told me to steer clear of Chimney 7, and I listened to my guts for as long as I could. I'd circle close but not too close to it, examining it from the vantage points of Chimney 6 and 8. I did this for 3 nights until I received my direct deposit paycheck and felt guilty about not doing my job. Before my next shift, I bought a heavy-duty flashlight and then headed straight for Chimney 7. The light reached considerably farther, down to ground level, I think. But even so, I still couldn't see the bottom. What I could see, however, was that at about 3 stories down, just below where my original flashlight stopped working, I discovered scratch marks. I guess they could have been anything. Even with 20/20 vision, it's hard to tell a scratch from, say, a scratch-shaped graffiti. All I know is there was something marking up the walls all along the circumference. I was already spooked from the scratches, so I don't know if what I saw next was my mind playing tricks on me. But as I panned the halo around, I caught something on the farthest side. It was some sort of long black shape, but as soon as my light hit it, 2 bright spots reflected back at me and momentarily blinded me. By the time my vision finally cleared and I looked again, there was nothing but concrete below. It took all my strength to finish my shift. I just had to remember the dollar signs that came with the mounting terror. They somehow convinced me I was imagining things. The last night was the worst. All of the chimneys were quiet, and I found myself dreading the silence more than I dreaded the booms. It was raining hard, which might explain why, as I walked by Chimney 7. I couldn't hear the growl I'd become accustomed to. I didn't want to go up, but I couldn't neglect my rounds again. It wouldn't be right. I was careful the whole way, hand clinging to the guardrail as I navigated the slippery circular staircase. Every step seemed to make the whole thing shake, and I was afraid the rusted metal would break once and for all. I was suddenly very aware of my added weight, that with the water having seeped into my clothes. Fortunately, the structure held, even though its integrity was in question. As I reached the platform at the top, I thought I could breathe a sigh of relief, but something caught my eye while I was trying to catch my breath. The rim of the chimney was broken. Large pieces of concrete littered the platform. I didn't need a flashlight to see the scratches this time. As I glanced into the chimney, I found deep gouges scratched up the wall, all the way to the top, 3 on each side, with a 4th that seemed to come from a different angle. The cuts were deep and purposeful, like desperate fingers raking a cliffside as a hiker clung for dear life. Whatever had clawed its way up, machine, animal, or I don't even want to think of the alternatives. It was now somewhere out there in the dark, and its grip was strong enough to break concrete. I had had enough. Everything about this damn job put me on edge, and even though there was a reasonable explanation, maybe the gouges had been made by grappling hooks or a device to slide down the chimney from the top like the ones window cleaners use, I was done. D-O-N-E. As much as I wanted to run down the staircase and back to my truck, the rain was still coming down in sheets, and the last thing I needed was to slip and crack my head open. I went slowly and methodically. Suddenly my worst nightmare came true. The stairs shook violently. I don't mean there was a gust of wind that made them jitter. I mean they were shaking. My stomach dropped to my feet as I imagined whatever had created those deep cuts in the chimney was now climbing up and towards me. The metal screeched as it bent, a sound far more unsettling than growling coming from a chimney, a sound more grounded in reality and in danger. I screamed and hung onto the railing for dear life, and then I felt a pop. Not in my body, not against my body, but through the metal. Pop, pop, pop. The bolts connecting the hinges to the chimney were falling out one by one. Through the heavy rain, I could have sworn I heard a scream like a coyote, and then the staircase went still. I was out of breath, on my knees, arms wrapped around the railing and paralyzed with fear. I could tell the structure was no longer safely fastened to the tower, as it was swinging in the wind, but I couldn't see the extent of the damage. It took me a few minutes to gather the courage to start moving, my white knuckles stiffly releasing my death grip. It should have taken 5 minutes to get back down, but I spent 15, the longest 15 minutes of my life. I could hear the staircase shifting as I slowly made my way from step to step, hoping it would hold and trying not to shift my weight and throw everything off kilter. I didn't know how many bolts were left, or if my weight could cause the others to come out. As I neared the bottom, I saw the final flight had been pulled from the chimney and was now suspended in the air. The handrail was warped outwards and undulated in parts, like a bent twist tie. It was still too high to jump off, so I had to climb down as the stairs rocked like a ship in a storm. Solid ground never felt more solid, until I saw something out of the corner of my eye, and then the bottom seemed to drop from under me. Between chimney 6 and 7, I found a baseball cap. It was shredded, but there was no mistaking the Fido Ditto logo on it. It was mine. Around it were long, narrow footprints about the length of my arm, with branches stretching out in 4 different directions like talons. I didn't wait around to see what had left them. It's been 2 months since that night. I haven't gone back. I keep receiving paychecks, like clockwork every 2 weeks. There's another direct deposit in my bank account. I don't know if it's to buy my silence, or if there's no one left to take me off the payroll.